what does this kind of like ritualistic concept mean to you all? Is that something that's a big part of your lives outside of the band?
I use that term when describing anything that to me is something that's very emotional and something where you're very present, where you allow yourself to be so present that you're not present anymore, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Hi, this is Tom for Ghost Cult Magazine, and I'm very excited to be joined by Brittany and John from Rwake, who are just about to release their first album in 14 years, The Return of Magik, on Relapse Records. I believe the album is coming out on the 14th of March, and I've been listening to the album a lot. I've been enjoying it so much. It's apocalyptic, it's ritualistic, the playing's great, it's powerful. It's like some kind of storm that's exploding all the way through it. There's beauty in it as well. It's an amazing listening experience. The tracks are these kind of like long, sprawling explorations. You don't really know where it's going to go. It takes you all kinds of places. Yeah, I'm very impressed. And I'm excited to talk to you both about it. So should we talk about ritual, Brittany?
Yes, I love the fact that you used the word ritualistic when describing. That's something that it's a term that we actually use a lot, and I think it's a term that should be used to describe music more often. Because I definitely think it's if you are going to put us into a genre, which is not easy to do for our style of music.
Yeah.
I would rather it just be called ritualistic instead of, doom sludge or something like that. So I love that you use that term, and I think it should be used more often when describing music.
Yeah, I appreciate as well that you have that take about calling it ritualistic music and not really going by genre, because I did find listening to the album that, so often we kind of get drawn into using genre categories to talk about music. And
Yes.
like you say, you can talk about sludge, you can talk about doom, but I don't think they're really the most important elements to talk about. And like before we started recording, I mentioned Neurosis. And I also, like, when I think of Neurosis, I don't really know what genre is best to use for them. It's apocalyptic music, it's ritualistic music, it's kind of magical. And I feel like those sort of terms are more useful in talking about the music than using genre tags. And I wanted to talk to you about ritualism, actually, and about kind of ceremony and about your interest in that. So where does your interest in ritual come from, and how has that always been a part of the band since you formed? I know, John, you've only been in the band, well, I was going to say more recently, but that's still about 14 years, right?
Right. Yeah. Joined right after Rest was wrapping up recording. Yeah.
Yeah. But John, I mean, even though that's just when he first started playing with us, he's been part of our family since the 90s,
Right.
late 90s. Early 2000s, I would say.
So evidently then you're all kind of kindred spirits. So what does this kind of like ritualistic concept mean to you all? I mean, is that something that's a big part of your lives outside of the band?
I use that term when describing anything that to me is something that's very emotional and something where you're very present, where you allow yourself to be so present that you're not present anymore, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of things, in my life that where I can achieve that same feeling in, whether it's music, whether it's art, or whether it's, literally climbing a mountain. I can get that same feeling. Definitely when, I have a very deep and close relationship to nature. And I have a very ritualistic process, that comes with that as well. But as far as us as a whole, I think it's, just an overall feeling that we all can relate to and channel.
What about for you, John?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I'm not really a religious person outside of, just music and close intimacy with family and friends and myself. And I think when I think of religion and ritualistic in regards to my life, it usually is music and family. And with this band, it's beautiful to be able to experience both of those things. And I think that shows in the music itself, the way we treat each other when we're writing, the way we trust each other and give space to each of us to kind of be who we are in this band. And so I think it absolutely shows, and it has shown in the past, even before I joined. What brought me into this band so much was that it was so deep and so many layers to it. It's very intriguing, and you want to know more and more. And the more you know, there's more to even know. And that's kind of like it parallels your own journey in life as well, So as this band grows and we've really grew so much over the past 2 years together, it just becomes, it's just part of it. Is we get together in a room. That's kind of the kindling of the ritual, and then when we get on stage, that's where the flame is just massive and warm and terrifying.
And I was planning to, I had some kind of like mystical, esoteric themed questions that I was going to get into later on, but I feel like we've dived straight into this kind of topic. So something I was thinking about is I was thinking of, I was actually talking to another musician about this recently, about the concept of flow, that you can have different activities where if you really get into them, you just kind of get lost in that experience and you don't really consciously think about it. And I was thinking, like to take neurosis again, I remember reading, I think it was Steve Von Till talking about the making of Through Silver and Blood, and saying that when they were making that album, they were basically like in a state of psychosis. Now, I don't know if he was talking about something entirely different, but I kind of thought it seems like another example of like being lost in the intensity of the music. And then I was thinking, for example, like about Killing Joke. And I'd seen Jazz Coleman talking about being on stage with Geordie and he'd be playing this music and Jazz is like in a kind of a trance state. And I thought, I wonder if for you guys, you attain something like that when you're playing together, where you feel like you're in some other kind of consciousness and it's not, you're not like really thinking like, oh, okay, I'm going to play this and I'm going to play that, but you're kind of lost in the music. Do you get something comparable to that?
100%. I think the term "a vessel for the divine," that's like that's you're just channeling something else, you're tapping in. It goes back to like the, being, when I said you're so present that you can become, that you can disassociate. It's like being so present that you allow yourself to disassociate in a way that really all you're doing is channeling the energy and the earth around you. I think, like, in simple terms, you just get lost in, you get lost in the music, but it's not that you're lost. It's like, it's taking you somewhere else. I think that's for all of us in this band. And I think that also, comes to play when it comes to writing. Like, we don't ever, when it comes to writing music, we don't ever like write music for like a specific listener. Like, okay, well, we're gonna write this song and it's gonna sound like this. And it's like, that's never part of our process in any way. We write music for ourselves. And I think Jeff said it perfect when he said, like a lot of times, because he's the one of the main writers in the band, he said, he used the term, I didn't write that, I captured it, and I think that is the best way to describe it. And it's the same thing when you're playing music. It's like, you're not, you're just channeling, what the earth is giving you. To be able to do that takes a real authenticity within yourself, in order to be able to do that. I think as creatures as a whole, we're very, self-conscious, and we're very judgmental of ourselves. I guess I'm getting a little bit off track here, but like at the end of the day, we're all artists.
Yep.
The only thing that keeps us from being artists is our own self-judgment. It's like, being able to write music is the same as, or, just being able to play, like just play, like that, that's what makes an artist, is having the ability to set your judgment aside. And, and you just do it for yourself. I'm just doing this for myself. I'm just going to write. I'm just going to draw this picture for myself. I'm just going to write this for myself. I'm just going to, just kind of let yourself go, and let all the criticism go. And when you do that, that allows you to tap into what we were talking about, and it allows you to just be really free. I think that's really hard for a lot of people to do in our society. But that is how you get to that level of just, of disassociation and just letting everything flow through you, is by, just kind of letting go and letting the process, take you where you're supposed to go.
Yeah, I think, and I guess, would you say there's sort of a balance to be had between the sort of letting yourself go and then technical ability? Because when I listen to the album, there's loads of great playing on it as well. But I guess sometimes, if you think too much about the technical side of things, it can get in the way of the expression. So, like, how do you balance those two sides out?
I'll leave that one up to John. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the question you just posed, where there is that, learning to unlearn is the vibe, but some of that technical stuff, I do have to be, me and Austin specifically, in the new record, at the end of it, it gets pretty insane. There's some parts on it that are like pushing both of our boundaries. So in tracking it specifically with me on a couple of parts, I had to get to where I didn't think about it anymore. And it physically technical things that, when you're creating them, you are having to be kind of smart about it, but, kind of mindful about it. But whenever I was recording it, I was trying, and I was tensing up, and I just kind of kept missing the beat, missing the part. And it was when I just took my mind out of it, and it was like, I nailed it. There we go. That's it. Move on. Everyone's like, no more takes, no more takes. So there is a level of responsibility to where you do have to pay attention to what you're doing, but there's plenty of moments live where you really just can let it go and let the music kind of come out of you. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, there's some times when I'm on stage in some of these new songs, I know it's going to be like, okay, all hands on deck, eyes down, no headbanging on this one, let this one kind of be you know what I mean, this fastball is coming in quick on this one, so I need to be ready to swing the bat with precision instead of just like slamming around on stage. So there's a marriage there between those two things.
Yeah. So, like, and in general, like, how much do you like to move around on stage? How much do you want to express yourselves physically when you're performing?
It's my favorite, one of my favorite things. I love that. I love it. Really is in conjunction with the musics and the rhythms and things. And one of the biggest things I've had to get used to is whenever I was playing bass, I was able to kind of, in the band, I was able to swamp around a bit more on stage, because it's, kind of, I'm not power chording, I'm not playing solos, so I could kind of really just follow Jeff's right foot, that kick drum, and just kind of be there. And one of my favorite bassists ever is Dave Ed from Neurosis, and following how he plays and watching him on stage and watching his menacing profile and how he conveys the music physically with his body and his face and everything was something that I was always inspired by too. So when I shifted to guitar and I was a bit more, had to handle a bit more of the intricacies, I've had to tame it a little bit, but man, I'm really am looking forward to playing these songs on stage, because there's some moments when I really probably black out and wake up like 6 minutes later. It's like, oh, is that riff over? Is that song over? Because I just transcended internally,
Yeah.
Yes.
And I understand that you've already been performing some of these songs, I guess, in kind of like evolving versions. So have you actually played any of these tracks since you recorded the album?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we did. We did a small run last year. I say last year, I mean like a couple months back. No, I guess it was over the summer. Yeah, we did a small run. Yeah.
No, we did the Spirit Adrift Pallbearer before we recorded the studio.
Oh yeah. But yeah, since we recorded, we've only done one small run, and then a show here or there since we've recorded the songs. Yeah.
And so what songs haven't you played? I mean, are there any of these songs that you haven't actually played live, or just songs that you haven't played in their finished forms?
Yeah, and so I'd like to express that there is only 6 if you count the outro songs on the record, but it's an hour's worth of music. So we've played 3 of them live. The first 3 songs on the record, we've played live since we've recorded them, but we've saved what is my favorite, track number 4, Distant Constellations, and then, we've saved, 2 3 counting the outro, which is a lot of our favorite song is the outro. So we've saved 3 pieces of music. I will say that. I hate to call them songs because of
Yeah.
their length and their. We've saved 3 pieces of music that we haven't unleashed yet, and 2 of those pieces of music being most of our favorites.
Yeah, well, I, to your point about Distant Constellations and the Psychedelic Incarceration, if I give it
Yeah,
its full title,
yeah,
that is
yeah,
probably my favorite song, my favorite piece of music on the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
album, let's say. And there are various different elements I love about it. I love the spoken word piece that
Mhm.
you've got at the beginning, and I also love the way that the track evolves through the course of it, because it's like, first of all, I wasn't expecting that spoken word part, and then there's such a long build through these more
Mhm.
kind of, I don't know if gentle is quite the right way to put it, but like more gentle passages, and then it builds and builds and builds, and there's this part about 9 minutes through where it's just like absolutely exploding. And I remember the first time I was listening to it, I was walking along the street, and it was just like the hairs on the back of my neck went up, and they just stayed up for the rest of the album. I was like, oh, I'm being transported somewhere else now. So I'm sure when you do actually play that live, it's going to be amazing for people.
And we plan on doing that on our shows coming up. But yeah, I mean, that was an amazing description. The spoken word is Jim Dandy from Black Oak, Arkansas. He had written the Psychedelic Incarceration. That was a poem that he wrote for Chris Terry to give to Chris Terry for us to use, and he actually wrote it years and years ago. And when we were getting ready to record, we were like, we've got to get this recorded of him, reading this poem. And it was a lot of work, but we finally, after we were done recording, we were in the mixing process, we finally, with after a lot of missed calls back and forth, we were able to get a hold of him, and some of the guys drove up to Black Oak, Arkansas, where he lives, hung out with him for the day and recorded that. I don't know if you're into like 70s psychedelic stuff, but some of the older Black Oak, Arkansas albums from like the 70s. I mean, they had 3 guitar players, super progressive, really out there stuff. Major influence for a lot of us when we were, kids, because it's most people would, if they've ever even heard of Black Oak, Arkansas, would relate to like what they would hear on like a classic radio channel or something. But if you just look up some of their videos of them playing live in the 70s, it's freaking amazing. And they were actually a big influence for a lot of of bands from like the doom genre. Black Oak, Arkansas was. So having him, record that for us, while it's up for interpretation, like you can interpret it however you want to me, it was like, if you know that anything, the history of us or the history of Black Oak, Arkansas, to have essentially a PSA from a public service
Yeah.
announcement from Jim Dandy on our record is like, to me, priceless. I mean, it's just like so great. Like I said, anyone can interpret it how they want to, but my interpretation was like it was a public service announcement. So it's just so absolutely great. And then the song itself is just, it's so much my fave. I mean, like there's everything that I would want in a song is in that song.
Mm.
And yes, the dynamics and the way it builds, and then you know the way the whole record evolves, like going from track 4 and then into that massive piece of music that's track 5. It's like that whole building up, those 2 songs together as as to me as one, it's just like, yeah, I'm done. Like we're good now. We we've achieved something that we're just so proud of. And even though like the record's absolutely amazing, it's like, to me, it's still not done. Once we start playing those songs live, I'm sure that they'll evolve and they'll become
Mm.
even better. Like I can't wait to not just to share that with the world by playing it live, but by us playing it live, it will grow into something much even bigger and better than what it already is. It's hard to imagine that, with where it is now, but I truly believe that it will once we, start actually getting to play it more.
Yeah, that's very exciting. The idea of having something that you've constructed and you've built like that, and then going, right, now we're going to take this on the road, and now we're going to see how it evolves, where it goes. It's not just like, okay, we're
Yes.
going to play these tracks as they are, but we're going to see where it takes us. I mean, I guess it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about channeling. You don't necessarily
Mhm.
know what's going to happen with the music, and everyone's going to find out.
Yes, I love it. And yeah, and it's not that, like playing it for like seeing what the audience will do. It's more about, getting the six of our energy on a stage, and then you take the energy of a room and you put that together, and it channels something even more, that would, that to me will help the song to grow in a way that I just can't wait for. I really look forward to it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Now, there's something that I wanted to ask you. It's kind of like two questions. One of them is going to be more for Brittany because it's going way back to the start of the band, and then there's a connecting question for more for John for when he joined the band. So, and what ties these two questions together is Steve Austin and Today Is the Day. So I'm fascinated to get the story from you, Brittany, about the long drive, because I feel like, as someone who's spent most of my life in Europe, it's kind of like hard to get a sense of the scale of the United States. So I'd like to understand like how you ended up working with Steve Austin for your first record, which I know hasn't had a proper official release, absence due
Yeah.
to projection. How did you end up working with him? And can you tell me a bit of the story about how that came together?
Man, yeah, that was crazy. I don't, oh gosh, it was so long ago. I hate to say I don't really even know. So CT had gotten a hold of him somehow, through us playing shows or something. And when he first pitched it, when Chris Terry first pitched it, we were like, what? Drive to Boston? Like we didn't even like have a van. we were like, we were just kids like living off of like crackers and stuff. I mean, like literally, like we were like, how are we gonna pull this off? Like it was just getting to Boston for us at that age with, we're all, like I said, I mean, very low income, as
Mm-hmm.
at that point of our lives. So just the thought of going to Boston was a just seemed like a mountain too high. But we did make it. I don't really know how it started. And to be honest, John, you've probably asked this, you've probably heard the story. Do you know?
No, but I remember. Yeah, I've heard the story, and it still doesn't make sense to me, like how it happened. And it was like you guys were, how it is when you're young and really naive, and you're like, we're gonna make this happen, and then you look back on it, you go, how the fuck did that even? How is it even possible? How you guys
Yeah.
got all that together and got up there? But yeah, that's it. Really, yeah. And Steve, knowing Steve and everything, and you guys together, I just can't even imagine, especially at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve, I mean, we're all characters. So Steve being the character he is, it was a match made in heaven. But yeah, we still that there's that still, yeah, we need to release that properly. There's work that has to be done to it first before we would
Mm.
be able to. But yeah, the process as a whole was pretty crazy and fun. And yeah, we were just so young back then, man. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm sorry I can't tell you exact details. I don't think there was like some really great story. I think it was like you like call him up and be like, "Are you available?" And he's like, "Yes, I am available." And you're like, "Okay, shit, now we have to go."
That in itself
Yeah.
is really cool insight. So if we fast forward about 10 years, then John, as I understand it, you were actually touring with Today Is the Day. And I think that kind of just about links up with how you ended up in Wake. So what can you tell me about your time playing with Today Is the Day and how you ended up joining Wake?
Yeah, so Steve was in Nashville at the time, had his studio going, and he had just started up Supernova Records, and he was had the rights to his back catalog. So he was releasing that, and had just released Axis of Eden at the time, and I was in a band called Christine that was one of his first signings for Supernova. So we went on this big Supernova Records, it's kind of like a label showcase tour, 30, 40 dates or so. And, got to know Steve well, got to know Space's Chris well, and he was working with Derek Roddy on drums at the time. And just loving it. It was like my first true, like, month-long tour out there in the world. And at the end of it all, Steve was wanting to ramp it up again, and asked me. He said, "Chris, my guy, I'm in Nashville. He's still, I think he's in Boston or something. It's like he's wanting to wrap it up and be done. So do you wanna join?" And I had never played bass before. I was a guitar player, but I had a bass. A buddy had let me borrow a bass years ago, and I immediately was like, "Yes, absolutely." He's like, "Oh, I'll pay you this, and you'll get fed." And it was like, you didn't have to pay me anything. Let's go. And it was the most insane thing. It was like 90 shows in 100 days, like 45 in US, 10 days off, and then 45 in Europe. Yeah. It was called the Total Resistance Tour. But yeah, so I was on bass, and I was just like a big puppy-eyed guy, and in 45 dates, we had it set up to where about every 7 to 8 days, we had a new support. And so it was like the East Coast was Mouth of the Architect, and then Canada was like Fuck the Facts, and then we had Kill the Client out in Texas, and then West Coast, I don't recall, but Wake was on the very last week of that, and I was so stoked about that because I first saw Wake in the late '90s. I did a show with them in another band I was in, and was just mesmerized at that point, and it just kept up with them and it kept in contact. Anytime they come through Nashville, I would see them, and especially with CT, he booked a lot of shows for my bands and friends' bands in Arkansas. And so couldn't wait to that time when we got to that last run of the tour. And all the guys in the van with me, we were touring with other bands. I was like, "You're listening to the whole Wake discography on the way," and across out in the West Coast, those long drives and stuff. And so landing and touring getting to those shows, we just clicked. It was like, we were already good friends, but at that point we became family. 7 days of hanging out with all the band every day, riding to them with other shows and stuff, being like, "Hey, Steve, I'm gonna ride with Wake tonight to Jacksonville. That's cool," and just, yeah, it was a connection. And the last night of tour was Atlanta, and we had like the biggest end tour party ever, and it was like a brotherhood, a family. And then fast forward to a year or so later, they had their offer to go to Roadburn, and Reid wasn't able to do it, and they were like, let's bring in John. Everybody, Reid was the biggest thumbs up of them all, and me and Reid had a bunch of like, "Love you, brother. Yeah, brother," conversations when we were on tour together. So it was kind of like a perfect, match to come in. And when I joined on bass, I knew the entire time, regardless of how long Reid was gone for, how much time he needed to be with his kid, or if he just wanted to take a break. I always knew that I was just holding the spot for him on bass. I like playing bass; it's a lot of fun. But Reid, there's no replacing Reid, and so I was really just there, like, you know, even borrowing some of his gear sometimes, borrowing a pedal. I would pick his brain. "So what do you do on this song with this tone and this and that?" And Reid's tone is unmistakable. About it. There's nothing I could do, and it's a lot of the tone comes from him and just his playing. So there was never anything I could do. I was there holding his space, but finally Reid came back, and we had another change in guitar, and I was slotted right over. I told him, I was like, "I don't care if you have four guitar players. If Reid comes back on bass, I'll be the fifth guitar player. Like, just keep me here."
That's really funny as well that you started out like, "I'm a guitar player." You got the opportunity to do bass with Today Is the Day, which you did, and then you had the opportunity to get into Wake on the bass, and now you're back to guitar again. It's just like this little well, quite a long interlude as a bass player.
Yeah, for real, man. It was all right.
Yeah. John's the king of like, whatever I got to do to make it happen. Like, this is all right. And what, I'm on
Yeah.
saxophone now? Okay. Let
Well,
me
it's
give me a little
that
bit. I'll figure it out.
it's that like Nashville mentality of like whatever you got to do to get in the RV to hit the road, whatever gets you on stage, let's do it,
All
like
right.
let's go.
And this is a very incidental question. I'm sure you've been asked this before, but when did Wake become Wake with an R? And what is the significance of the R?
So that started in about 97. It was Wake, without the R. Found out that there was another band that already had that name. And one of the members was a little inebriated and was like, right. And so being, stupid children, we thought it was a great idea to put an R on it. We probably would not make that same decision these days, just saying, but now we've grown to love the R. I mean, it's there, and as far as how people pronounce it, we don't care. I mean, as long as you get it, as long as you understand, as long as you feel the music, you can call it whatever you want to.
I actually think that's great because I thought, oh, this is going to come from some deep mystical explanation. And I love the fact
No,
that it doesn't. I think that's
no,
even better.
no, it was just a rah, and then that added the R, and there we are. We still have it.
I think that's pretty cool. That's like, what they say, why are pirates called pirates? Because they are.
Yeah. See, I mean,
There you go.
like, there you go.
That's terrible. Where can I go from here? So anyway, I was about to wrap things up and I've wrapped them up with a terrible joke. So in terms of the release of the album, so as we do this, it's just under a month away. So what are your plans in terms of touring and shows for the release in the coming months?
I mean, we all want to play as much as we can, but realistically, CT still has small children, so it's really hard for him to do much more than a weekend right now. But we all want to play as much as humanly possible. That we need it, and we think the world needs it right now, especially with all the crazy stuff going on in the US right now. I think it would offer a lot of respite for a lot of people. But as of right now, we've got during the release weekend, we've got a show in Nashville and a show in Little Rock, and then we have in April we have a show in New Orleans and one in another show in Louisiana. Is it Baton Rouge?
Shreveport.
Shreveport. But other than that, like I said, if I would love to play more shows, but my love to play more shows isn't enough to actually, make it happen. So we're going to do as much as we can. But with that being said, if we're anywhere close to you, um, you may have to make the drive because the chances of us doing like a full US tour are pretty slim
That's
as
pretty
of right now.
understandable.
To
Yeah,
be,
no,
to be honest, yeah.
yeah, no. I mean, I understand from what I was reading about that most of you, if not all of you, have got young families, and it's
Mhm.
got to be hard just keeping a band together at all when that's going on. So, yeah, life does get in the way of creativity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it also fuels it too, I mean, it also fuels it too. But yeah, traveling with young children is not easy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's not for everyone. I mean, I guess like trying to remember. Did Frank Zappa take his young kids on the road with him? Maybe he didn't. I'm not sure, but
Well, lots of people do, but lots of people don't have 6 members in their band either, So, I mean, we'd have like a whole baseball team, but yeah,
And
that
our promo shots that look like the Brady Bunch, like
yeah, all right. I
times
mean,
three.
well, and I'm like, I'm always in like, management mode. So I'm like, my daughter's 13 now. She can sell merch. We can put
it's
her
good
to
thinking.
work. She can load gear. She's
True.
really strong. She's on the wrestling team and the swim team. She can load gear.
Yeah, that merch table's not going to man itself.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. And that
Right.
amp's not going to move itself either. So
Exactly. Right. Brittany and John, I'm going to let you both go. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. As I say, I absolutely love the album. I think it's incredible. I can't gush enough about it. And I think it's going to be great when people get to hear it. And it's going to be amazing when you get to play these songs in their entirety and see how they evolve into the future.
Thank you so much for all your kind words. Yeah, we really, really, really appreciate it. And we're so glad that, when we construct music like this, not everybody gets it. And from your words, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that you get it, and we really appreciate it.
It really, at the risk of sounding a bit woo-woo, like it really does, touch me quite deeply. So yeah,
awesome.
It's really, really great stuff. However long it took you, from my point of view, having not put any of the work in, it was definitely worth it.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
It means a lot, man.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time, thank you both, and all the best.
Cheers, brother. Have a good one.
Right, thanks.